I wish people would laugh more because blank.
Because they'll feel better.
So let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David?
People going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
Hi, I'm David Glass for the Hourglass Podcast. This season, we've been interviewing a number of people whose work is tied to humor: stand-up comics, authors, actors, and those who write and direct comedies. I became curious about how humor impacts the brain, the science of what happens to your brain when you're trying to process the negative feelings as you go through a breakup. I want to know how the brain works when it's angry and sad, and its thoughts slowly shift to focus on humor. Fortunately, we found Dr. Sophie Scott, the director of the Institute for Cognitive Neuroscience at University College London. Her specialty is the study of how the brain processes sound and the neural basis of speech, sound processing, and social roles of vocalizations. During Dr. Scott's studies, she developed a keen interest in nonverbal emotional vocalizations, including the perception of and production of laughter. Her credentials are many. She was elected a Fellow of the Academy of Medical Sciences, was elected a Fellow of the British Academy, and was awarded a CBE, Commander of the British Empire, by the Queen. She was also awarded the Royal Society's Faraday Prize. Let's welcome Dr. Scott.
I understand it's the end of your day
It is
there.
indeed, yes. It's very, very dark here.
We've yet to talk to anyone who can explain what happens chemically in the brain when you're laughing or looking at a situation in a humorous lens. Could you give us an introduction on that topic?
There's a number of different changes in your brain's chemistry when you laugh. The first one, which happens really quickly, is that there's a reduction in your adrenaline levels. And adrenaline is that fight or flight hormone. If you're walking down the street and you trip and you get that kind of rush, you suddenly feel very alert, and that's as you nearly fell over, and that's adrenaline just powering through your body, and it's getting you ready to run away from danger or to fight with danger. It's sort of making you ready for action, and it works really quickly. And when you start laughing, in fact, even I've found if you do something you anticipate is going to make you laugh, your adrenaline levels start dropping really quickly, and you can very easily measure that if you track your heart rate. When your heart rate's completely co-varies with your adrenaline levels, and as soon as your adrenaline levels go down, your heart rate goes down. Now, when you laugh, actually, while you're laughing, your heart rate tends to go up quite a lot. But if you measure your heart rate before and after you've been laughing, you'll always find it's lower afterwards. That's just straight down the line, adrenaline. And there's another very important hormone that has effects on the brain called cortisol, and cortisol's the stress hormone. It's what wakes you up in the morning. So that's why sometimes when you wake up, you feel a bit grotty, and that's cortisol at play. And it's also when you are stressed out, if you're having a difficult time at work, if you're not sleeping well, and you have that sort of horrible dragging feeling all the time, that's cortisol levels being high, and it's not good for you. It's more sluggish than adrenaline. It doesn't change its response quickly, but you get a slower effect of it. But when you've been laughing, you get this decline in adrenaline levels. So you are more relaxed because of the adrenaline, and you are less stressed because of the reduced levels of the stress hormone. You also get an increase in the body's naturally circulating painkillers, and those are endorphins. And that's actually, if you went for a run and you feel really good afterwards, that's endorphins at play. And it gives you that nice warm buzzy feeling. It's almost certainly just because of actually the work that you do when you're laughing, because you move your ribcage quite a lot. You're not doing a huge amount of exercise, but there is some happening, and it's enough to give you, like, for example, you can tolerate more pain when you've been laughing, just as a result of this increased levels of the body's naturally circulating painkillers. So it's giving you this kind of, it's relaxing you, it's making you less stressed, and it's making you feel good.
It's a triple effect on those three different chemicals in your brain and body. So if hypothetically a person is in some sort of depressed state, they've broken up. I'm a divorce lawyer and former psychologist, so I'm interested in people getting through their breakups and getting on to the rest of their life. But if someone's going through a breakup, what can they do in terms of using comedy? How would they get these three things moving in the right directions?
One of the things I've learned the hard way, and of course comedians and comedy writers know this, is you can't just make people laugh.
Right.
They've got to feel in the right mood, they've got to feel in the right place, they've got to be with the right people. And that can be hard to, if you are feeling bad, if you're feeling isolated from the people that you might want to be with, that can make it much harder. That being said, that I was really struck by a finding. Now, unhelpfully, this is a study on married couples, but I suspect the same is true of friendship. There's a study by Robert Levinson in the US, and he's been doing a longitudinal study of married couples. It's been going on for decades, and he gets them into the lab and he stresses them out.
Right.
And you can physiologically see them getting stressed. Their heart rate starts to go up. And he makes them talk about a problem in their relationship to stress them out. So it's really stressful.
Right.
And the thing that he finds is that couples who use what he calls positive affect, but he means humor and laughter and smiling, they immediately become less stressed. It's like they've kind of, the laughter is having its effect on their bodies. And they're also, if you look at this longitudinal data, they are happier in their relationship. And in fact, they're even more likely to stay together. It's not because the laughter and the humor is a bit of magic dust that makes everything okay, because it only works if both members of the couple laugh. So if one person laughs and the other person doesn't laugh, that if anything, people feel worse.
Right.
So there's something interesting about laughter as a kind of like a signifier of the sort of relationship where in a difficult situation, you could find a way of making yourselves feel better together. And as I say, I don't think this is limited to romantic relationships. I think that's what we mean by friendship, is
Right.
people with whom we can do that. So if there's somebody else, it might be a relative, it might be an old friend, but somebody who would, together, you could find a way of laughing what's happening, maybe even laughing at what's happening to you. That is probably the best way that you would find some route to be able to achieve that. And it is interesting, thinking about your point about comedy, I do a little bit of comedy. I'm not, and no one's confused of, believes no one thinks I'm a professional, but one of the comedy sets I have, which actually is about laughter, is all about, I frame the whole thing about actually what was a horrible incident when some teenage boys were really nasty to me in a town called Ipswich a few years ago. And I deliberately turned that into a stand-up set, because every time I tell that story and I get people to laugh at it, I get a bit more ownership back of what actually at the time wasn't very nice. And I think that's also that being able to laugh at something, it gives you some distance on things, but it gives you control. So I think that's also that kind of, if you can find a way with the right people in a way that's feeling right for you to be able to start laughing at what's happening to you, then it gives you the benefits of the laughter and the bond with the person that you're laughing with, but it also is giving you that like a slightly different relationship to what is, likely to be horrible for you.
Yeah, you know what? And you started talking about being with a partner, some sort of friend or a family member. Here in Los Angeles, we're dealing with these awful wildfires that are out of control.
Yeah.
And just last week, my wife and I got ordered to evacuate. We packed up the house real quick, threw our kids in the car, got in the car.
Nice.
What was feeling very tense. And as we were driving out of town, and our house is fine, everyone's safe, everyone turned out fine. But
Good.
as we're driving out of town, I turned to my wife and I started smiling. And I said, if things don't turn out so great, then at least we don't have to figure out what the new tile for the bathroom is going to be. We've been trying to figure out what kind of tile to put in the bathroom. And we both started laughing. Our kids were looking at us a little strange, like, what is so funny up there? But it really broke the tension.
Yeah.
And the rest of our drive was great, and the rest of our brief exile turned out to be pretty good too.
Good. No, that's a perfect example of
Yeah.
in a close relationship, finding that way in a stressful moment to feel better together.
Yeah.
About what's horrible. Yeah,
it's a horrible thing, but trying to figure out some way that you're in control, or I'm gonna laugh about this some way.
Exactly. It's exactly it. Yeah.
When you compare laughter to other things people can do to relax, meditation, exercise, and so forth, where does it rank with these various things?
I think the thing that is these things are so multifactorial, you can't necessarily just rank them all in order. And I know, I
Sure.
mean, whenever I've tried to meditate, I just get migraines, but I know people who you couldn't get through the day without their meditation. So it really,
Right.
there'll be something that works for you. I think the thing that's really interesting about laughter is that it's a social behavior. It's an emotional expression that seems to be an expression basically of a kind of social joy, an emotion that you experience when you're with other people. And so I think the thing that laughter buys you is the social contact as well. And we're social primates. So
Hmm.
for a human being, just like if we were Gallardo baboons, the size and the strength of our social networks, it predicts how healthy we are physically, how healthy we are mentally, and even how long we'll live. Now,
Hmm.
some of that is because the people in your social network, if something goes wrong, they might help you. So sometimes it's practical help from friends. But actually, most of the time, it's because the people in your social network are the people that you talk to and the people that you laugh with.
Hmm.
So, and that is good for you in the moment. You get an endorphin relief from talking. Really, you get endorphins from talking to each other, and then if you laugh, you get even more.
Right.
So when you are talking to a friend, or even just having a chat with someone in a shop, you are both feeling better because of that interaction and that brief amount of laughter, but you also are strengthening your bond with them. So it's like a kind of virtuous circle. Laughing and talking to each other, it both in the moment feels good and will make you more relaxed, but it's also strengthening those bonds, and those social bonds are just desperately important to us. They're so important
Right.
for our health and our well-being. So it's like a kind of if you think of exercise as being really, really important activity for your body, that is going to be great for your well-being and it's going to be great for your health. And at the moment, it feels good when you're doing it and it has all these other benefits. I've started to think of laughter and conversation in that same way, in that in the time you're doing it, it feels good, but it's also really, really good for your brain and your body to be in these social interactions and to be strengthening those links you have with other people. And there's no
Right.
real way around that. It's very interestingly, people have studied like digital natives. So like my son's grown up in a totally digital world. He's on
Hmm.
Instagram. That's where his social world is, on Instagram and
Right.
WhatsApp. But even people of his generation, they feel better when they've spent time with a friend than if they've spent the
Hmm.
same amount of time with that friend online.
Right.
The necessity for laughter, it requires you being, not just knowing those other people exist, you need to be with them to laugh with them.
Yeah.
Your laughter just, we just don't laugh when we're on our own. We need those, we need that person in our proximal space. Now that might be a screen like this. I mean, and
Right.
we'll laugh definitely, but we will get a lot of that same benefit from this, but you'll get even more if you see the person in physical space, because you just start aligning all these aspects of your behavior with them as well as your laughter. So it's got this I've started to think of laughter as being something that you should, not necessarily in a formal way, like, oh, now we must laugh, but make
Right.
time in your day to be with the people with whom you can get to share laughter.
Mm.
When we went into the first lockdown, um, coming on to 5 years ago, my son was 13 and very anxious. It was
Well,
sort of, the whole thing was scaring him. My partner and I were both working from home and we were in this tiny flat and it was really difficult. Then at the end
all
of the
right.
first day, I said, right, 5 o'clock, we've put away the computers, we're all stopping working. Let's watch Seinfeld. Let's watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And we started this thing at the end of start of every evening. We would just sit down and watch something funny on television. And it was absolutely deliberate on my part. It was just be a reason for us to laugh together. It
Hmm.
didn't really matter what we watched. And then we ended
Right.
up watching, I think, Seinfeld twice, Brooklyn Nine-Nine twice. It was, and we still do it actually. At the end of the day, at the start of the evening, my son wants to watch something funny with us, and who knows how long he'll want to do that. But
Right.
it's what's now become a family thing. But it was completely deliberate on my part because I knew we were all really stressed out, and this would be a way to feel better and for us to feel more bonded as a family because it was just so stressful.
Yeah. So if you were a prescribing type of doctor, if you were going to prescribe a remedy for someone to use comedy to get themselves out of negative emotions, it sounds like a big part of the prescription would be having somebody with you. It's not just watching a comedy movie or watching some stand-up,
Yeah.
it's doing it with someone.
Absolutely. This is going to sound silly. There's actually psychological studies that have shown we enjoy things more if we do them with other people because you get this shared experience, and you
Right.
definitely laugh more if you do a funny thing watch a funny thing with somebody else. So definitely, I think that's that social element, that bonding with other people, is such an important part of the experience. And you will, what we find is that if people watch something that's funny when they're on their own, they might laugh a bit, but they will laugh so much more, roughly 30 times more if there's somebody else there.
Sure. So just taking a couple steps back, how did you get into the study or the effects of laughter? It seems like an odd place to go. Was it because you had an interest in stand-up comedy? Did your other research just lead to it? How did you get there?
It was basically through the other research I was doing. So I study human voices, and I've been working for, like 30 years now on speech and how we talk and how we hear other people's voices when they're speaking. And about 25 years ago, I started getting interested in stuff other than just speech. We do other things with our voices, and I got interested in how we express emotion in our voices. And I was working with colleagues in Cambridge who are all face researchers. So the most of the research on emotion is done with faces because they're amazing maps of emotion. And they were working with patients who had deficits in recognizing emotions, and they wanted to test, well, okay, we tested the face, let's try the voice. And I got involved there. And I was looking at these emotional things we do when, if you're frightened, you're more likely to scream than to say, I am frightened. These more kind of, and they're really interesting. So these screams and disgusted sounds, they're more like animal calls than they are like speech, and they are more like facial expressions. They're not verbal. There aren't any words in there. So I started looking at those, and I was, just finding that it worked quite well. The same patient who maybe couldn't recognize a frightened face also couldn't recognize a scream as sounding frightened. And I just got really struck that all the emotions we studied, because this is all coming from the face literature, but it was all really negative. So it's all things like fear and anger and disgust and sadness. And there'd normally be happiness in there, but that was the closest you got to like a positive emotion. And this is all based on research by a very famous American face researcher, emotion researcher called Paul Ekman. And he was in the UK about 20, it probably would have been about 23 years ago. He was at a conference. And at the end of his talk, I asked him about like these emotions that seem to be like found in all human communities, that they're all really negative, what's going on. And he said that he thought that actually, because of course all the work was done with photographs of faces, that's what people used. He said if you had something more dynamic, like maybe video, but also like looking at how bodies move and how voices work, you might find more positive expressions of emotion that would have a sort of universality to them. And I thought, well, I do voices, let's have a look at that. So I started looking at positive as well as these negative emotions. And he was interested in things like triumphant sounds and what he called amusement, which is laughter, and physical pleasure sounds and contented sounds and relieved sounds. So I just started collecting sounds like that and then studying those. And as soon as you start studying laughter, it just runs away from you because people are incredibly good at recognizing it. It's absolutely everywhere. We use it in a phenomenally complicated way, and hardly anybody's ever studied it. So that was it was initially part of and I still do study all that other stuff, but I just got more and more focused in on looking just at the laughter because it was basically being used in a way that was very unlike other emotional expressions. It's really, really common in social interactions in a way that screaming isn't, So there's something really, it has a very interesting, very complex functional use by humans, and it's even complicated in other animals. We aren't the only animals that laugh. So that was really how I got into it. And it has to be said, I mean, I have colleagues who think it's an absolutely stupid thing to study, and I think I think that's one of the main reasons there hasn't been much research into it. It just seems like silly and trite. But there was another very good American psychologist called Robert Provine who he studied a very lonely path looking at laughter, like from the 1980s onwards, and he was arguing that it was this really important social behavior and you should think about it in that light. And at first I thought, well, obviously he's wrong. It's all to do with humor, but it does have, and we do laugh when stuff's funny, but he convinced me in the end, laughter has this very core role in comedy, but it also has this much bigger, older social role where it's doing social bonding and it's being used, we use laughter communicatively. So it's a very, very complex phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. A little bit off topic. Way back in graduate school, studying Alfred Adler, he had there's a German term, and I'm going to butcher it, Gemeinschaftsgefühl, that if you were in a negative, if you were depressed, doing things for other people would help you pull you out of that. Do you have any updated research on that?
No, it's very good for well-being. Basically, humans, they feel better if they feel needed, and if they feel like they've been engaged in socially approved of activities, and so and having a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So doing things for other people, it ticks off all those things. It's approved of, it helps other people, you feel needed, and there's a reason for this. So it's tremendously positive experience for people. Absolutely.
Right. So maybe add that to the prescription pad in addition to social interactions with comedy, sending people out to do public service.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely.
So I understand you're writing a book on laughter. Where are you with that, and how's it going?
It is going so slowly. I'm the director now at work, so it's very hard to carve out time. There's always something else, but it's one of my I will just stop pretending that I'm doing it. A New Year's resolution, and I'm going to get this sorted out this year, because my very nice agent is getting very tired of me saying, "Oh, it's nearly there." And
Right.
I've written a draft. I've got notes. I've got a shape to it. I just need to actually sit down and make myself do it. So yeah. Hopefully, watch this space.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eye out for it. I for one, extremely interested in reading that book once it's done. Fill in the blanks for me. Something that makes me laugh out loud is blank.
Actually, the thing that makes me really laugh is proximity. I laugh at things a lot more if my partner's there or my son. That's like, I can find something funny, but I will start crying with laughter at it when I've got home and I've had a chance to show my partner or my son, or things that have got like I remember there's a book called pretend books by a schoolboy called Nigel Molesworth from the 1950s, and they made me laugh when I was a kid, and they would have been from my father's generation, and so things that my father got me into, and now I've got my son into. I really like those things, make me laugh, but I also feel really warm about it, because you kind of feel people handing on enjoyment across the generations. I really love that feeling as well.
Absolutely. Well, Doctor, it was wonderful talking to you today. I certainly learned a lot about laughter and how to prescribe it. And honestly, that including the social aspect of it, I haven't gotten that piece from talking to comedians, and everyone said, yeah, go watch a funny movie, go to a comedy club. And they missed entirely that social interaction, that having someone there to share it with. And that's the main lesson I've learned from you today. A great lesson.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching. Check back with us for another new episode, or visit thehourglasspodcast.com, where you will find dozens of archived interviews, all of which are meant to help you. Thanks.